You are standing in a brightly lit, minimalist coffee shop. You have just ordered a medium black coffee. The transaction should be the simplest economic exchange in human history. You give the establishment $4 and they give you a paper cup full of hot bean water. But then the barista does it. They grab the glowing iPad, they execute the dreaded 180-degree screen pivot, and they push it across the counter. They look you dead in the eye and say the most terrifying words in the modern English language. It's just going to ask you a quick question. It is not a question. It is a psychological hostage situation. You look at the screen. The options staring back at you are 20%, 25%, 30%, and a microscopic, transparent, practically invisible button that says Custom Tip. The barista is watching you. The three people standing in line behind you are watching you. The ambient, lo-fi hip-hop music suddenly sounds like a ticking bomb. Your social anxiety spikes, your lizard brain panics, and you frantically smash the 20% button. You just paid an extra 80 cents for a human being to turn around, pull a lever on a metal box, and hand you a cup. You did not do this out of generosity. You did it to avoid feeling like a monster. Welcome to the tipping epidemic. We have successfully weaponized social awkwardness and turned it into the primary economic engine for the American service industry. For decades, the concept of a tip was a discrete, optional bonus. It was a few extra dollars left under a napkin to reward a waiter or a cab driver who went aggressively above and beyond their basic job description. But over the last few years, the system has mutated like a financial virus. We are now being asked to tip at bakeries, at drive-thrus, at mechanic shops, and horrifyingly at self-checkout kiosks where the only person providing any actual labor is you. We are no longer tipping for exceptional service. We are paying a mandatory guilt tax simply for participating in society. To understand how we became trapped in an escalating Cold War of iPads and percentages, you have to understand the greatest, most diabolical magic trick ever pulled by corporate America. It is a legal aberration known as the tipped minimum wage. In the United States, federal law allows employers in the hospitality industry to pay their workers a staggeringly, comically low baseline wage. In many states, it is literally $2.13 an hour. If you tried to pay someone $2 an hour in any other industry, federal agents would raid your corporate headquarters. But the multi-billion-dollar restaurant lobbying groups spent decades convincing the government to carve out a massive legal loophole. They argued that restaurant owners shouldn't have to pay their own employees a living wage because the customer will magically make up the difference out of the goodness of their hearts. Just stop and think about the absolute audacity of that business model. When you buy a pair of jeans, you do not hand a $5 bill directly to the factory worker who stitched the pockets. When you buy a laptop, you do not slide a $20 to the assembly line technician. In every other functioning industry on planet Earth, the cost of human labor is mathematically baked into the sticker price of the product. The employer assumes the responsibility of paying their staff to produce the good. But the American service industry successfully outsourced its entire payroll department directly to your conscience. They get to keep their profit margins artificially high, advertise artificially low prices on their menus, and shift the entire burden of keeping their employees out of poverty onto you, the customer. And if the employee cannot make rent that month, the corporation doesn't take the blame. They blame you for being a cheapskate. It is a masterful, psychopathic shifting of accountability. And the defense of this system is always exactly the same. Proponents will swear up and down that tipping is a pure merit-based system. They claim it ensures exceptional, personalized service because the worker is highly motivated to earn their keep. The data, however, tells a profoundly different, much darker story. Studies consistently show that the amount a person tips has almost zero statistical correlation with the actual quality of the service they received. Instead, tipping introduces massive systemic discrimination. People tip based on their race, gender, age, and physical attractiveness of the server. It is a system that mathematically punishes minorities and older workers while rewarding young, conventionally attractive staff. Furthermore, it completely destroys the power dynamic between a business and a consumer. It forces workers to endure sexual harassment, verbal abuse, and horrific customer behavior, entirely because their literal ability to buy groceries that week is held hostage by the mood of the guy sitting at table 4. They cannot defend themselves because standing up for their own dignity might cost them a 30% pay cut for the night. It is an exhausted, broken paradigm, but we are so deeply conditioned by it that we assume it is the only way a restaurant can survive. We assume that if we eliminate tipping and force corporations to pay a standard living wage, a cheeseburger will instantly cost $40 and the entire economy will spontaneously combust. But to prove that this is a complete myth, we do not need to rely on economic theory. We just need to look at an entire hemisphere that operates on a totally different philosophy of human labor. Let us examine the third largest economy in the world, Japan. If you travel to Tokyo, walk into a restaurant, finish a spectacular meal, and leave a handful of yen on the table as a tip, the waiter will not thank you. They will likely sprint out the front door, chase you halfway down the street, and frantically return your forgotten money. In Japan, tipping is not just highly unusual, it is actively considered insulting. The Japanese service industry operates on a cultural philosophy called omotenashi, which roughly translates to an intense, prideful dedication to hospitality. But the lack of tipping is not just about polite culture, it is rooted in pure, unadulterated economic logic. In Japan, the social contract dictates that the price printed on the menu is the actual final price of the good and the service combined. When you order a bowl of ramen, the cost of the noodles, the broth, the electricity, and the human labor required to bring it to your table are all fully calculated into that one number. The employer pays their staff a negotiated standard living wage to do their job correctly. So if you attempt to hand a Japanese waiter extra cash, the implication is incredibly offensive. It implies either that you think their employer is too cheap and corrupt to pay them a fair wage, or it implies that you view the waiter as a beggar in need of your personal charity. It completely disrupts the social harmony and the professional dignity of the worker. The waiter is a professional. They are doing their job perfectly because it is their job, not because they are financially begging for your approval. And guess what? The Japanese restaurant industry has not collapsed. A bowl of ramen does not cost $40. The service is universally renowned as some of the most efficient, polite, and spectacular in the world. They simply treat human labor as a fixed operational cost, exactly like paying the electric bill or buying fresh ingredients. The United States has trapped itself in a bizarre psychological labyrinth of hidden fees and moral obligations. We are allowing giant corporate entities to pit the working class directly against the middle class, forcing us to squabble over 20% iPad buttons, while the executive board completely skirts their responsibility to pay a living wage. The guilt tax is not a sign of a generous society. It is the glaring symptom of a heavily financialized economy that refuses to value its own workers. The next time a glowing rectangular screen is shoved into your face for a transaction that required zero actual hospitality, remember that you are not the villain for being annoyed. The villain is the system that put that screen there in the first place. I'm Norman, and I'm going to go learn how to roast my own coffee beans to escape this madness.